All right. We are live here. I'm with Jesse Heisel, and he is the gentleman who produced We Found Something, which I don't know if you guys have checked it out, but I've got a video out on the YouTube channel doing a review of it. I really enjoyed the movie. So, Jesse, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jesse Heisel. I'm a filmmaker. Anyone who knows me mostly knows that I am a horror movie filmmaker. I have dabbled in a few other genres, but horror is definitely my passion. I've been making films since high school and just been in love with the whole craft since then. And now I'm finally working my way up into making features. So I'm just excited to create more and get everyone's opinion on what they think of my style of filmmaking.
Nice. Okay, well, let's get to a few questions. I've got a few things that I tend to ask everyone, and I thought we'd sort of get to some of those. Do
Mhm.
you remember when you first got fascinated with the horror genre? What got you into it, and when it was?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of horror my whole life. It was never a genre that was hidden from me as a kid. My parents have always loved horror as well. And I've always particularly been a fan of 80s horror films in general. Those have always been my favorite when I was a kid. And then as I got older, what really inspired me to actually become a filmmaker in horror was actually it was Kane Hodder's performance as Jason Voorhees. If it wasn't for Kane Hodder playing Jason, we probably wouldn't be here right now, and I mostly wouldn't have been a filmmaker in general. And it's just been the genre that's spoken to me the most, and it's just a way for me to speak uh, in a way that I want to talk to the audience. It's the language that makes the most sense to me, and it's how I feel it's the best way for me to get my point across in my stories.
Nice. Um, let's see here. Um, Now, when it comes to your horror stuff, do you read books as well, or is it mostly just movies? Do you have a favorite medium?
It's mostly from movies. I mean, I do read books every now and then. My favorite book is The Lord of the Flies, which I could say that could be, in a way, a horror medium.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly my knowledge of horror is within movies and television. But yeah, mostly just me watching as many films as I could possibly can and just seeing the connections between the two of what makes a movie scary, what doesn't, what works, what doesn't work, and just kind of seeing the all of the cliches that a lot of indie filmmaking uh, turns to, and I in turn try to go in the opposite direction to at least try and be somewhat original.
Yeah, one of the things with art, I think, is all art builds on the stuff that came before it, but you do need to try to bring your own flavor and something unique to it and new. So yeah, I think you do a good job with that.
Thank you.
Um, Now, you mentioned Kane Hodder. Who are some of your other favorite horror creators? And
Oh, I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, John Carpenter comes to mind. I mean, I still consider The Thing to be not just his best film, but definitely the best in practical effects from all the creatures and death scenes within that movie. I just think it's just a masterpiece within itself. Wes Craven is definitely up there as well because, I mean, he's like one of the few people that's ever been able to make two franchises, which is amazing. I'm also a fan of. James Wan, who created Saw. I've always appreciated his work as well because, he created Saw, which is a great franchise within itself, and then just all the other films that he's done outside of the genre as well have been fantastic as well. Um, Another one I would have to mention, probably a lesser known, unfortunately, would be uh, Robert Green Hall. He's unfortunately he's no longer with us, but he was a very well known makeup artist in Hollywood who also became a director in his own right and directed a bit of a franchise of himself with the movies called Laid to Rest.
Mhm.
Who and he was actually the first person that I ever met in Hollywood, and he really got me connected into some really nice people. And it's unfortunate that he's no longer with us, but I do have to give a shout out to him because he was a great guy and a good friend and a very, very talented filmmaker in his own right.
Nice. I have heard of his movies, but I have not seen them. I need to correct that, I think.
I would very much recommend the Laid to Rest franchise. There were two films of his, both very good.
Now, we obviously can't just live by spooky alone. So, what other kind of things really grab your interest outside of the horror genre?
In movies, or
Well, and just in movies in general, whatever kinds of things you're really into.
with movies, aside from horror, I also really love silent films, particularly slapstick silent films. Um, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, uh, Fatty Arbuckle, uh, Harold Lloyd, all of the classic slapstick comedy actors and performers of the 1910s and 20s are big favorites of mine. I actually have a goal of mine to watch every Charlie Chaplin film that's ever been made. Um, I think I'm probably about halfway there. He made like 81 movies, so
Wow.
I still got a ways to go. But luckily, most of them are short form, so they're only about maybe 10 minutes. So thanks to you two, I've been able to catch up a bit. um, and then I guess outside of movies in general, I'm also a big fan of professional wrestling. I always been a fan of that. My family's always been a fan of professional wrestling in general, and I just enjoy going to live shows. I also like uh, theater as well. I like going to plays and musicals. I actually acted in a bunch of plays and musicals through my high school and through some of my college as well. So it's always been an extra enjoyment of mine because art in general is something that I always love, and seeing people perform at their best is always an enjoyment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that too. Um, Now, we'll touch on this. Actually, you mentioned you've done some stuff that isn't horror. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? I know there was like a TV series you did, which may have been sort of horror-ish, I think, but you also did. I think your first feature was more of a comedy.
Yeah, the TV show you're mentioning was something I actually did when I was at the University of Iowa, where I got my bachelor's degree. I was a part of this video production called Student Video Productions, and I was a producer on a show I created. It was a horror anthology show called Dark Wings. So every episode was a different story, and basically the whole show kind of focused around morals and how we kind of view morals these days and kind of judging them and kind of just expanding on how we generalize people. And that show was really fun to make. It actually became one of the most popular shows on the entire campus. It was also one of the most controversial as well because I didn't hold back, and that ticked off a lot of people. but I'm used to that. Um, as for my first movie, yeah, that was a comedy. It was called Mellow. I just wanted to do something different for my first film, so I decided to make a romantic comedy. And basically, that movie is about very much the ways of high school, of just kind of dealing with being the new kid at a different high school and dealing with all of the different cliques, the bullies, the popular people just being very judgmental, and just anything that an average American high school student would go through in any part of the United States. And that was fun. If people want to see that, it is streaming on Tubi and Plex and a couple of different streaming platforms as well. Oh, and Amazon. Um, so people can see it. But that was definitely outside of my comfort zone for sure to make something completely outside of horror. But it was fun.
Now, is there a way to stream the television series, or is that pretty much lost to time?
Yeah, you can see all the episodes on my YouTube channel. It's
Mhm.
called Dark Wings UITV, all one word. Um, I think those were all posted about, I want to say about 5 years ago. So, I mean, they're still there. Um, so, yeah, you can check out all those. We made, I think it was 12 episodes, something like that. Yeah, most of them are pretty good. One of them I think kind of sucks, but I made it. So, but you learn, you learn.
Oh yeah, you know what? My attitude on creating stuff is the best thing you do should be the one you're working on right now, because you learn from the things you did before,
Oh, yeah.
and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things that later on you think, well, that just wasn't that good. But it's as long as you're always doing better. That's what counts really.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Um, let's see, sorry, trying to get to my questions here. Now, this one's kind of an odd one. Just a little insight into someone. If you could sit down to dinner with any three people, either people who are still around or people who are gone, who would you be having dinner with? And what would be on the menu?
Okay. Um, well, I would say Kane Hodder. I actually have had dinner with him recently, but I would still do it again because he's an awesome person. So he would be on there. Um, I guess I would, yeah, I would also do Robert Greenhall as well because it would have been nice to see him one more time. And third one, I'd probably say Steven Spielberg, just because a lot of his movies were uh, basically my childhood, from the movies he made to the television shows that he helped produce during the 90s. that were that was basically a big majority of what I watched as a child. So it'd just be nice to get to meet a director that uh, had a lot of had a lot of enjoyment as a kid just watching his medium. That or Quentin Tarantino. Yes, Spielberg was busy.
Yeah, big little bit of a difference in terms of their output.
Hmm.
So what would be on the menu?
Would be on the menu would probably be Italian food because I love Italian food the most. So classics: spaghetti, lasagna, a bunch of garlic bread, and definitely have a guy with a giant uh, Parmesan cheese block just spraying on everything.
You got to have that. I mean, nothing wrong with cheese. Um, Now, when it came to doing your first horror feature, what were some of the differences about that versus the things that you had done before? I mean, what were you able to bring to it that you weren't able to do at other things, and what were some of the extra challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we found something that's definitely different than any other movie I made because, well, for a lot of different reasons. Um, One crucial difference would be is if you watch the credits, you'll see that the whole movie was improvised. There wasn't a script written. We basically just went off of bullet points for each scene. So that was a big uh, change of how filmmaking is done. Another big challenge was we filmed it in the middle of COVID. So we had to go through all the regulations, and the crew was very minimal. Basically, it was like me and two to three other people as the whole crew. But that's not something that I'm unused to. I'm used to doing really minimal uh, productions with very small crews. It's just, as of right now, as a kind of unknown filmmaker, it's because it's kind of what you got to do and work your way up to get more people. Um, but yeah, challenges were just everything. We filmed the whole movie in 4 days, which is it's possible, but I don't recommend it. um, if you watch the whole movie, um, I would say about 75 to 80% of the movie was all shot in 1 day. That's everything from the car scenes to all of the wood scenes, except for the final scene at the end with the house. Just yeah, about 80% of the movie was in 1 day, which was very exhausting because I completely underestimated all of the hiking that we would have to do. And we filmed for, I think it was about 20 hours straight. So just 20 hours of nonstop walking and running. And then it also started to hail. And so now it's extremely cold. And when you're hiking and it's cold, and your muscles get even tighter. And so the first day was just, it was just a day of Mother Nature just not being on our side. But luckily, the whole cast and crew was just very supportive, and they could have complained at any time, and I don't think I would have blamed them. But everyone was just gun ho the whole time, saying, because I just told them, like, we have this location for 1 day, so we have to get everything done today. And they were just like, all right. And just every moment was spent filming. We only stopped once to eat, and then the rest of those 20 hours just go. You film on this side of the property, and then I'll take this actor and we'll film these scenes. And it was just constant filming nonstop. And uh, after the whole film was done, the lead actor, Nathan Owen, he left a very nice post on Facebook calling me a very unconventional director, which is very true for this project.
See, I didn't know that it was that the script was improvised because I have to admit I didn't watch the end credits.
It's all right.
I should have, but I didn't. So that's actually really cool because there's a lot of interesting dialogue in that, considering it was improvised. That's really speaks to everyone in the movie.
Yeah, it was. I was really surprised by that. Basically, what we did was we took 1 day before we filmed, we took our lead actors and we met up and we just kind of improvised particular scenes, just so they would kind of get an idea of what their characters were. And that's what I kind of learned from improvising this movie, that as long as your actors understand how their characters would act in a situation, then the improvisation of dialogue just comes more easily. So that was a good thing that we did, because we were trying to figure out, especially for Nathan's character, about how naive he should be to be nice about it. Um, and so doing that day of improvise, it really helped him realize what I wanted from this character. And I basically just told him, like, whatever you would personally do in a situation, your character would do the opposite. And that's why a lot of times in the movie, his character goes literally running after the monster, which is something you wouldn't actually do. And just anything that he would naturally do as a human, his character would just do the opposite to create the story and make it move forward. And that's a great benefit that we did for improvising that one day. It helped us out a lot.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wish I had realized that before, because that's really cool and very unusual. Um, Now, something else that we talked about, or you mentioned a little bit about, which I was wondering if you wanted to go into more detail, is the fact that the weather conditions that one day you were filming and how they changed drastically on you, and sort of what obstacles that presented and how you adapted to that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I already knew because I checked the weather before that there was going to be some conditions, and how it kind of worked out was so we live in well, I live in California, and the location that I purchased a film at was uh, 3 hours away, and so the weather said that there was going to be a chance of rain or possible hail, and so if you've seen the movie, that's why it's raining because literally like almost all the way up to the drive it was raining, and we got a little lucky because the little patch of land that we got was actually surrounded by mountains. So the clouds didn't get to our location too often until it started to hail. Now, I can film in hail, so we kept going. If it started raining there, we wouldn't have been able to shoot because the equipment would have gotten ruined and everything. But hail, that was an exception to where we could do it, and it wasn't hail that was big enough to where it was going to hurt anyone. So, uh, yeah, you see it in the movie where it actually starts to hail and everything, and we just kind of went with it, just saying this is another day that they're out there. So that's where I kind of got lucky. Is we filmed enough in the movie to where it identified this was day one of them being outside, and then it started to hail, and then we were ready to shoot for the second day in the movie of them going outside. So it kind of worked in our favor where it just started to hail as soon as we wrapped the final scene of day one. And luckily, the hail didn't get any harder or um, I think it only lasted about maybe an hour or two. So you do kind of notice that in the movie as well, where it's hailing and then it does stop and everything. So, but luckily for us, that happened because it was just, and it was such a weird thing too, because not only does it hardly rain in California, but then all of a sudden it's hailing. So we're like, okay, I mean, someone clearly doesn't want us to make this movie. And yeah, so it was just it's just a situation that we just had to fight through basically. And um and then it started to get really cold at night. Luckily, the owners of the property they were good people, and they made a fire for us, and they made a bonfire. They had a heater in the garage where the makeup artists and cast and crew could hang out at while we were filming something else. So we at least had a little bit of warmth in between shots. And but yeah, I think anyone who was on day one will agree that that day was just awful. we, we really didn't enjoy day one, but at the same time, we were having fun. So it was just a weird day in
Well,
general.
I was gonna say probably the best day for it to happen though, because you're sort of your adrenaline, I would guess, is going, and you've got the maximum amount of excitement for the project at that point, probably. So
Yeah,
you're going to be more able to get through it and just keep going on.
yeah. Like I said, everyone was just gun ho because they knew we had one day to shoot. So everyone was just laser focused on, all right, let's get this scene done, go straight to the next one, just go, go, go. And I mean, you even see it sometimes at the night shoots. There's one shot that I really like where Nathan turns at the camera and you can see the bags under his eyes. Like that wasn't makeup. That was him being so tired after working 20 hours, and but it works because um, it helps really push the story into showing like these guys are just out there for God knows how long.
Right. Now, I screwed up when I was going back. I keep going back and forth to my document, and I missed an important question, which is, without giving too much away, why don't you kind of give the viewers an idea of what the film is about?
Oh yeah, sure.
I
That'd
can't
be
believe I
helpful.
missed that one. Sorry about that.
No, no problem. Yeah, so in case you haven't seen the movie, it's called We Found Something, and it's a found footage creature feature about a brother and a sister who go on a rock climbing trip to help conquer the brother's fear of heights. And on this trip, they discover a unknown creature in the woods, and the brother wants to go further into trying discovering what this creature actually is. And as the story moves along, they begin to get more than what they bargained for. And that's what I'll say.
Good, that works. Um, now, hang on a second here. Also, you're getting ready to do another movie now. What can you give anybody some idea about what that's going to be?
Yeah, I'm actually gearing up to make two movies this
Oh
coming
wow!
up soon. This this one that I'm planning to film uh, this year, the remainder of this year. It's a horror comedy. Um, Basically, the same production or distribution company who distributed We Found Something. We've been talking, and they kind of want more content from me. So I decided to make a quick movie while I'm back home in my home state of Iowa, and I'm going to be making a horror comedy. It's going to be called Man Chicken. It's a it's going to be another found footage, but it's going to be kind of like a parody of We Found Something in a way, where it's going to be about two brothers trying to find out if the urban legend of a half man, half chicken hybrid lives in the town's woods. And you'll see in the movie of whether or not that myth is real or not. So that's what I'm working on for this year. But the bigger one that I'm actually going to be working on for next year, which will be we're going to be making a campaign for either Indiegogo or Kickstarter because it's going to be a much bigger project. It's going to be a female slasher movie called The Queens of Evil. And that movie is about a group of women who own this dance, who own this business disguised as a dance club, but in reality, it's actually a torture chamber where these women lure in the worst of worst types of men, domestic abusers, rapists, you name it. And they use this tactic to bring those types of men in, and they bring them into the back rooms and just torture and kill them because they feel in their minds they are vigilantes that are doing the world a favor. And everything is going fine until a health inspector comes along and starts snooping around, trying to figure out the truth behind this business. And one of the women accidentally gets into a relationship with a former customer. So it's going to be much bigger than my other projects. We actually have quite a few names attached already that have been showing much interest. Um, I've been speaking with people in the horror genre, such as Linnea Quigley,
Oh nice.
Julianne Prescott, Tanya Kay, and there's no promise yet, but I have been speaking with Kane Hodder as well to
Oh
possibly
wow.
make a cameo. He does have the script, and we have spoken about it, but there's no promises yet. But he is reading it right now, so hopefully, if he likes the script after he's done reading it, he might agree to make a cameo. So there's a chance. No promise, but there's a chance.
That would be a really big deal for you, as big a fan as you are of him, to have him in one of your films, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be that's definitely a bucket list of mine to have him in one of my movies, even if he's there for just a day to make a quick cameo. That would be enough.
Yeah, that would be great. Um, and I just realized I need to backtrack again to another question that I had that didn't wind up making my list, which was you had mentioned to me at one point that Blair Witch was obviously a bit of a influence on We Found Something, which I mean, found footage it kind of has to be. So could you go into a little more detail about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when it comes to found footage, I mean, Blair Witch is definitely the reason why it became has become so popular. I mean, it definitely had a bit of a downfall throughout the years, and then it kind of got brought back because of uh, paranormal activity. But me personally, I always considered Blair Witch to be the found footage movie that truly brought that subgenre of horror into uh, mainstream. And I always consider it to be still one of the best found footage horror films. And I definitely wanted to kind of utilize the same tactics that they used in making that movie to make my movie. I've seen documentaries on how they made the film, and the director kind of did the same thing where he didn't tell the actors the same thing, or he wouldn't tell them everything that was going on that day, and he would constantly have some of the crew members mess with them and stuff. And I believe, if I remember correctly, in a documentary, they said like the actors didn't know that they were going to be messed with when they were in the tents. So stuff like that is kind of what I utilize as well. Where in my story, I didn't tell the actors how the movie was going to end. All they knew was we were going to this different location with the house at the end of the movie, and that's all they pretty much knew. They had no idea what was going to happen, if there's going to be somebody in the house or anything like that. They were just kind of going with whatever was being filmed in front of them and just reacting naturally. So that's definitely how I always kind of see comparisons with me and the Blair Witch Project is just kind of the similarities of how we approached and uh, messing with our actors.
Yeah. So in other words, when that ending, they were just as much in the dark as the viewers are.
Oh yeah,
Which
the
I
only
mean, I remember when it gets to that scene, I had no idea what was going to happen. Well, no, I had some ideas. My ideas didn't turn out to be what happened, but I had
yeah,
some ideas about what was going to happen. But yeah, so I can imagine if they were in the middle of the scene and didn't know, that would be pretty interesting. Um, Also, you not only directed and produced and everything in the movie, but you also acted in it. Um,
mhm.
does that present some kind of challenges? Being an actor and the director.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't. I definitely see myself more as a writer director, but I did take acting classes when I was at the University of Iowa. So I'm by no means gonna win an Oscar, but I know how to act enough if the character fits me. And the whole reason why I'm even in the movie was just because our budget was so low, and I just decided, well, I can pull this role off, and that's why I just kind of gave myself the role. It's not because I think I'm a fantastic actor or anything. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a challenge when it came to performing with other people. I mean, some of the other scenes were in the like the bedroom scenes. That was literally just me and a camera at 1 in the morning, just filming whatever came to my head. And then when it came to acting with some of the other actors in the movie, that was a challenge as well because, like I said, I underestimated all of the hiking and stuff. So how we scheduled it was we filmed day one, which was a 20-hour film day, and then we'd have to wake up again the next day and film as well. So myself and everyone else was just exhausted. Our muscles were aching and stuff, and so we just had to fight through the pain of exhaustion to pull off these scenes. And along with that, improvising, which takes a lot of mental strain as well. So, and then on top of that, I'm the one who has to direct the thing. So while I'm acting, I'm also thinking, okay, does this work in the story? Are we missing anything? Do I have to add anything? Do I have to do any reshoots? So yeah, a big just a mind mesh of everything of me trying to figure out what's going on, and not just going on right now, but thinking of all the stuff in post production. It's just it's a lot.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That would be pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Now that's pretty much the end of the questions I've got. The only thing I want to say is there anything that you'd like to talk about that I didn't ask you about?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything. I'm an open book. If you got anything, I'm willing to chat about whatever you got.
Well, I'll just say anything come to mind for you that you wish I had asked you about.
Oh, sure. Well, we could talk about the chaos that is distribution.
Oh yeah, that's actually kind of interesting because I get DVDs and Blu-rays from a publicist who the company puts them on MVD, which is where I got your movie.
Hmm.
But I know they're also digital distribution, which is a completely different thing, right? They're
Yeah.
completely different companies that do that. How does that work?
Well, I mean, from what I've worked with this film, it was much easier than my first film. I found out the hard way that if you're a filmmaker, horror is the easiest genre to get distribution for, and
Okay.
um, and with my first film, I made a romantic comedy, which I didn't know at the time, but that is the hardest genre
Oh
to
wow.
get distribution, especially when you don't have any name talents involved with it. And yeah, so my first movie took years to get distribution, and what it has today, I'm lucky with because I found some. There's a lot of great distribution online companies that help indie filmmakers get at least on streaming platforms, because there's just so many now that there's some streaming platforms that'll just take anything, and that's a benefit at least for indie filmmakers like me that just want to have their product on some sort of platform. So with my first film, I finally found some distribution with this company called Film Hub, which is, if you're a filmmaker and you need distribution, you can sign up for free, and you just put all of your information on there with the film and posters and all that stuff, and then they do all the work of trying to get it onto different platforms, and they send it out, and if the platform thinks it's suitable for their demographic, then they will order it, and then you just get a percentage of the watch time revenue. And as for this film, my distribution for We Found Something was a company called Wild Eye Releasing, and I've been aware of Wild Eye for years. I've seen a bunch of their movies. Like I'm a big fan of the movie they distributed called The Velocipaster, which is just a hilarious B movie, and that's kind of what they specialize in, is ultra low budget B horror movies. And that's a big thing I guess I would say to any filmmakers watching is, when it comes to distribution, you should really do your research on what the company looks for. Even when it comes to big, multi-million production companies. Like if you want to make a Frankenstein movie, then you go to Universal because they're the monster people, and that's who made those. And if you want to make a family kids movie, Disney or DreamWorks or something like that, you just got to know what their product is and understand what they look for. And so I knew from just watching a bunch of Wild Eye releases movies, I knew what they distribute and what they kind of search for and what their audience is like. And so Wild Eye was one of the first companies that I went for, and it was a much easier than the first movie by far because um, I put out they have it on their website as well. They're very open to receiving content. It's just send a link of your movie to them, and then if they like it, they'll get in contact with you. And so I did, and then I thought, okay, I'll just send this movie out to them. If I don't hear anything back in a month, then I'll move on to this other company that I've been looking into. And I think it was about 2 weeks later, I got an email from the CEO of Wild Eye saying, "We love the movie, we love the monster. We'd like to work with you on distributing it." And it's like, okay, great. And then it just became a couple months of getting everything prepped for them, making sure the movie was in the right aspect ratios, and uh, they also wanted to do, if there was a chance that there was countries that wanted to any foreign countries that wanted to dub the movie, I also had to make out a dialogue list for them, which is basically me going back and writing out all the dialogue, when it was said and how it was exactly said, and the whole when it was said at the right timestamp and everything.
Oh, that sounds tedious.
Very tedious, considering I didn't have a script, so I had to literally rewatch the whole movie like 4 times and go, okay, she said this line at 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and it's like, okay, and I did that for every single line. So, and
Yeah.
I understand it's important because from what I learned, from what Wild Eye told me, is there are some countries that just don't accept just closed captions. They literally want to have every movie dubbed in their language.
Well, and that's kind of understandable if you've
Yeah.
watched the closed captions enough.
hmm Yeah. So I was like, okay, I mean, that's, if they want to do that, that's fine. If they want my movie, they can do whatever they want with it. And so,
I
yeah, it was
actually,
just,
I actually have some experience with doing text to the times on on the shows, because I used to do. If you ever saw on G4 TV when they
mhm,
used to run Cops 2.0, where they would have all the extra content in there, I
mhm.
was the guy who wrote a lot of those, and you had to do it all with the timestamp and go back and get right to the second. God, that's tedious.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can't imagine doing it for that.
Yeah. It was, I think it took me about a week to do all of just that. And then along with all the other stuff that I had to send their way as well. And also had to make an MOE with them, which is basically just sending them audio of uh, audio of the movie, then a different audio track of just all the sound effects, then one of just the music. I didn't have music in this movie, so I didn't have to do that one. But it's just all that stuff that you have to do in order to make dubbing much easier. And that was actually fascinating, though, to realize that you had to do separate audio tracks for each one for dubbing. And it makes a lot more sense now, considering if you go back to watch any, let's say, like Jackie Chan movies back in the 70s, you kind of notice how when the English is dubbed over them, that's all you hear. You don't hear any background sounds or anything like that. You just hear them talking. And that was because they didn't layer the audio correctly, or they just took out all the audio and just put in the English dubs. That was kind of a fascinating realization for me.
Yeah, and you learned a new skill that you didn't know you had, right?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of different skills to that, and I don't even consider myself an editor. I just know how to edit. So it was a lot of just learning all these different things that go into distribution. But it's important though for me to know this stuff, considering that's what I want to do, and it'll at least be crucial for me to have this knowledge for when I get an editor to edit my other movies. I'll probably be the one editing Man Chicken, but the Queens of Evil, I'm not editing that. That is going to be a big project that I need a true editor to do. But luckily, I have friends who are editors who will uh, greatly take that load off of my shoulders.
Actually, I thought of something else too, and I'm curious on your take on this. I know myself and most of the other people I've talked to have talked about how the horror community in general is very welcoming and
Mhm.
supportive. Has that sort of been your experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I would probably say it's one of the most open-armed communities when it comes to movies. I mean, aside from uh, comic book conventions, horror is definitely the biggest and loved form of movies, and I think medium in general because it's just. I mean, you don't see any rom-com conventions or anything like that. You don't see anyone cosplaying Ryan Gosling or anything. And so, yeah, it's just very open. And when you go to conventions and you get to meet some of the actors that you're a big fans of, it's always great to know that, at least from my experience, a lot of them are just down to earth people, and they don't really take this fame as they don't have any like ego behind it or anything for the most part. I mean, every once in a while, from what I've heard, there's a few
Oh,
sour apples.
there are always going to be exceptions.
Yeah, but people like from the ones that I've met, I mean, Kane Hodder, incredibly nice guy who loves practical jokes on people. Um, another people I met, Tiffany Shepis, just a really nice woman. Um, Felicia Rose, extremely nice, and yeah, just people who are just kind of just down to earth and just appreciate that their work has been beloved for years, and I think it's a great gig. And yeah, I mean, just look at it. You, if you get into one horror movie that becomes famous, then you can be pretty set for life, as at least for conventions go. Because then you'll just be constantly brought back and everything. I mean, I even saw I don't know his name, but I saw the actor who played the latest Leatherface for the Netflix movie. He was at a convention, and it just came out, and already he's getting gigs for a character that he played. So who knows? He might be getting a few more gigs as well because of that one role.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, conventions are for someone who can do those conventions are really lucrative.
Mhm.
Even I know, like even like the Star Trek conventions, a lot of those people who are in like one episode and they can still go do the Star
Yeah.
Trek conventions and they make a decent amount of money doing it.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And the other thing I think about horror as a genre for movies, especially, is horror fans, from what I've seen, tend to be less nitpicky about things. I
Right.
mean, you get into science fiction or fantasy movies, and people will just tear it apart, all the little things. But horror fans, it's like, okay, we get a lot of times they're low budget. You don't have the best acting. Nobody's winning an Oscar for this stuff,
Hmm.
and you've got special effects that leave something to be desired. But if it's fun, people like it. and I think that's something that's sort of unique to the horror world, from my experience anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I said, very open arms. Like horror fans, they just want to see an entertaining movie. At the end of the day, they don't need a-list actor or a big budget. Just most of the time, I mean, if it's a slasher movie, for example, if it's just a someone with a cool looking mask or a cool weapon, or more importantly, if it has at least one cool kill, then okay. I mean, most of the slasher movies they're mostly the same anyway. For the most part, it's a bunch of campers in a woods, and then they get stalked by some crazy person in a mask.
Yeah,
But that's okay. I mean, I've seen so many indie movies where I see the same opening scene every single time, where it's two two young lovers in a tent, either in the mix of having sex or about to, and then they get killed by the killer, and then opening credits of whatever it is. And I've seen that opening so many times in indie movies, whether it's a slasher movie, creature feature, some sort of uh, mutant or alien. That's usually how a lot of those movies will start off, if it's a cabin in the woods type of movie. But it's okay because uh, I'm not picky, and most horror fans aren't.
right. Yeah, as long as you get a few thrills and some interesting kills, and if there's a surprise or two thrown in there, hey, it's great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think I'm big fan of the horror genre and everything. So it's like I think our community's pretty great.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's yeah, and it's definitely when it comes to people, uh, the actual people, I should say, it's great to just mingle with them as well. And when I was doing the film festival stuff, promoting We Found Something, it was great to just speak with other people to kind of, I guess, nerd out about your favorite franchise, or your favorite uh, kill of all time, or you know, always fun to have those what if debates. Like what if Jason fought Michael, and who would win and why, and it's just fun stuff like that to just talk with. And the people always running the conventions are really really nice people that are always just down to earth, and a lot of times they're filmmakers themselves. I When I first started doing film festivals, the first film festival I was ever part of was one in Iowa called Halloween-a-Palooza, which is actually the only horror genre based film festival in Iowa. It's the only film festival that only shows horror movies, and I got to meet with the founders of it, and they're just really nice guys. They've been making ultra low budget horror films for years, and um, one guy who's the founder, he calls himself Insane Mike, and he's just a wacky guy. He kind of reminds me of like Jack Black for some reason, because he's just always full of energy and stuff, and it's just really fun to see those very passionate filmmakers and horror lovers to then go on and make their own film festival to help hopefully promote other filmmakers in the world.
Yeah, I think those sort of independent festivals are and conventions. Those are the best ones because it's not a big business commodity like
Right.
a lot of the Star Treks, and I think a lot of the Comic Cons now are just really big business. And you don't I don't think it has the same atmosphere as what you get with the more independent, smaller conventions and things. Um, it loses some of that fan sort of thing. I think that some of that passion. I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say I'm more of a fan of smaller film festivals and conventions for that same reason. I mean, especially um, if you want to truly meet one of the actors or someone in the business that you're a big fan of, smaller conventions are a lot better because you can have a little bit more time just kind of talking with them. And I've done both, where I've gone to small conventions and I've gone to big ones, and yeah, it's definitely with the big ones, the lines are just gigantic, and you may only have about 60 seconds to talk with someone who you're a big fan of, and you can only say so much in 60 seconds. But for the smaller ones, you can uh, really get a chance to talk with them and at least get them to know you a bit. I mean, that's what I did actually when I met Kane Hodder for the first time. I went to a small convention um, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called Horror Realm, and my we found something, got into the film festival part of that, and I was like, oh, okay, great, it got in there. And then I just one night decided to research the festival, and that's when I found out that Kane Hodder was going to be there. I was like, oh well, this is just fate talking to me saying go. And so I went, and that was the first time I met him, and that's where I actually gave him the Queens of Evil script to. I basically just I had about maybe 3 minutes to talk to him, uh, and I just told him like, "You're the reason why I became a filmmaker. You're a big inspiration. I want to give you my script to see if you'd be possibly interested in, at the most, read it and possibly in it." And he said he would, and um, the whole film festival for that was about 3 days. So every day I got to go back and have a little chat with him every day, and I'm glad I did that because later later this year I went to a bigger film festival that he was at because he told me he was going to be at Monster Palooza, which is in California, um, and I got to meet with him again, and he actually recognized me,
Nice.
and so that was great. And after the whole festival was done, we actually got to meet up afterwards and have dinner and had a really nice conversation. And so, yeah, a lot of benefits towards smaller conventions, especially if you want to get a particular person that you're a fan of involved with one of your projects.
Yeah, I know because like the bigger conventions to me, if you're getting an autograph from somebody,
Hmm.
it's almost like you're on a conveyor belt.
Yep.
I mean, I know some of the Star Trek conventions, you don't even hand the item to be autographed to them. You hand it to someone else who hands it to them, and then they sign it, look up at you, and hand it back to you.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, wow, that's really a great connection right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, yeah, a conveyor belt is a great way to say it. It's just, yeah. So I definitely recommend the smaller ones. Like, I've never been to like a Comic Con or anything like that just because that's just way too big for me in general, to where it's like, there's no way you could actually meet someone that you wanted to meet.
Yeah, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I've been to quite a few Star Trek conventions, and I know the one where I did actually get a reaction out of the conveyor belt one was I was done up as a Klingon, full
Hmm.
Klingon uniform, and I was getting Michael Dorn's autograph,
Hmm.
and he like signed it, handed it to me, looked away for a second, and then looked back up and said, "Nice uniform." So I
Yeah.
at least got that, but
Yeah.
that's
Sure.
all that's better than most people get.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely those little things that, as a fan, you'll always remember. I mean, to him, he's probably just saying that, but to you, that meant a lot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But so anything else you want to get out there?
Um, let's see. I talked about distribution and all that. Let's see. Um, well, I think as a fan of horror, I think this year has been really great for horror movies. It's been a really uh, surprise and refreshing to see Hollywood actually making good horror movies. It's been a while since I've seen an actually good horror movie that was produced by a Hollywood studio. But this year it's been surprisingly well for the most part. Um, there's obviously been a few terrible ones, like the latest Jeepers Creepers movie.
Yeah, I've heard terrible things about that. And that's a shame because I love Jeepers Creepers movies.
Yeah, it's I think at this point it's a franchise that should just die. It's I don't think there's any way of bringing it back. But as for great movies, I mean X and Pearl. I mean, just to start off, I personally I think Pearl is my favorite movie that I've seen in theaters so far. It's just a fantastic movie in general, not just for horror, but just in general. It's just a really good story. And I mean, that's just not. I mean, there's been so many good ones that have been a surprise. I mean, people were really surprised by Barbarian, and uh, I didn't see it, but I heard that Smile did really well. Um, and yeah, it's been a really good year for horror, and I think it's great. And you know, hopefully one, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but hopefully Hollywood will finally recognize horror as a legitimate genre and finally give it some sort of award or something at the Oscars, for crying out loud, considering it's one of the most successful genres and beloved genres in general
Yeah.
for, basically since the beginning.
And I guess if we're talking horror releases for this year, you got to mention Terrifier 2. I've never seen the first one. I didn't see the second one, but I heard it's like 3 hours long and it's still just kicked at the box office. I mean, did really, really well.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, Terrifier 2 is also one of my top ones because, yeah, by far that is the most violent movie you'll see this year, and I love Art the Clown. I've seen all of the short films and movies that that character has been in, and from what Damien Leon has done with that character. And it's funny you mentioned that because one of the actresses in the movie, Casey Harnett, is my friend who I've known since college, who actually was in a couple of Dark Wings episodes. And she's actually going to be in The Queens of Evil as well.
Oh, nice.
And she's going to be co-producing it with me. So yeah, she's really going off of the success of Terrifier 2 right now, and that's why we wanted to capitalize on wanting to move forward with the Queens of Evil because of all the success. And she's definitely going to be recognized from that because she is in the easily the most notable death scene in the entire movie. Like
Oh, I think I've read about that scene.
yeah, she gets skinned alive and
Yes,
everything.
I've read. I just read about that scene today. I got to admit, I'm not quite as comfortable with some gore as I am others, and so I'm still debating whether I want to see either of those movies. But
It's intense. Like Art the Clown as a killer does not hold back. And well, first off, it's great because it's all practical effects. And Damien Leon, who's the director, he also does all the special makeup effects himself. So he's very talented as a director and as a makeup artist. And yeah, my friend Casey, she just gets brutalated in that movie. And it was interesting because I saw it in theaters and I already knew she was going to die in the movie because if Art the Clown sees you, you're going to die pretty much.
right,
And she already told me as well that she's she was going to die in the movie as well. So I was prepared for it. But man, I was not prepared for how much she got destroyed in that movie. I mean, it was, even though I know it's a movie and everything, there was parts where I was like, I almost had to turn away because like, oh my god, like because it's my friend up there,
Right,
and
right.
so it hit a lot differently than it was some other actress doing that scene because like I know this person, but yeah, she talked about it later on because I wanted to have a discussion with her, and she was just like, yeah, it's just another day on set. Like Damien would just come up to me and say, I got this crazy idea, and she was just like, yeah, let's do it. And it was interesting as well because she told me like the movie had to be stopped because of COVID, and that gave Damien plenty of time to make uh, that death scene even more horrific. So because of COVID, that's the reason why that's death scene in general is even more brutal. Like
Wow.
if COVID hadn't have happened, that death scene would have been about half as violent.
Wow.
And so in a weird way, it's kind of a blessing, I guess, for I guess Casey because she is now a part of one of the most brutal death scenes in cinema history.
So she'll probably go down, in horror history. She'll be somebody everybody remembers for years and years.
Oh yeah, they're definitely gonna remember her for that death scene for sure. And right now she's just kind of going. She's not really thinking about it. 'Cause she's like, it's just another movie, just kind of another day on set. And but everyone else is kind of telling her like, no, this is a big deal. Like this movie's like, you know, it's making millions of dollars in theaters. Like people are really talking about this movie. And she's like, yeah, I mean, it's just a movie I accepted. And she's just kind of nonchalant about it. And so she's not letting it get to her head. Is basically.
And that's a very good thing.
Yeah, but it's fun, and uh, I'm great to have her be a part of the Queens of Evil as well. It's been something that we've been talking about for years of getting ready and me just pushing forward and getting all of these other people who I've mentioned to show interest in the project. And yeah, I really think now is like a great time to do it because of all of the other names that I mentioned, plus now she's been in a very successful horror movie. So now that's going to bring interest as well. So I think
Yeah,
that's a great benefit for the Queens of Evil in general.
yeah, it could be a big breakout movie for you.
I hope so. I mean, if it was going to be one of my movies, I would want it to be the Queens of Evil for sure because it's definitely going to be a much bigger project. It's going to be a SAG project, so that's going to be much different for me as well. Working with the SAG actors and understanding all of the rules and regulations of. I mean, I've worked on SAG projects before, so it's not going to be too much of a difference, but it'll just be different because I'll be in the director's seat this time and co-producing it as well. So it's just different in that fashion, I guess. But at the same time, it'll be fun because I'll get to work with actors who I've been a fan of for years and really get to work with uh, more professionalism, I guess. And I guess, as Nathan would say, I would want it to be as unconventional this time around. And it's definitely a project that I am very passionate about and definitely want to see come to light. And I definitely think it will definitely have some notice in the horror community because it's the Queens of Evil is definitely the most violent script I've ever written by far. It's I could see some people dubbing it as a torture porn movie, something like Hostel, let's say, in that respect. But yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see people's reactions. I basically wrote the script for uh, for women who are fans of horror, because I don't think in a way people who are behind the scenes in making horror movies haven't really utilized the fact yet that there are just as many female fans of the horror genre as there are men. And I think it'd be fun to just give a movie for the ladies and have them cheer on these uh, killer women just torturing these awful men. And
Yeah, I think maybe the closest I can think of, and it's almost more action adventure than it is horror, but Death Proof. I mean, they're not the antagonists, but they certainly rise to the occasion. The women in
yeah,
there.
sure. Yeah, it's definitely, it could be. That was actually one when we were trying to figure out how to market this towards investors and stuff. Is Death Proof was definitely a movie that came to mind when we were talking about how to compare it. So yeah, Death Proof was definitely one. And um, some people who have read it said the dialogue does kind of resemble um, Quentin Tarantino in a way. I by no mean am ever going to say I'm as a talented writer as Quentin Tarantino, but I would have to say that his writing has inspired my writing style, um, to say the least. But uh, I'll just take that as a very flattering comment that some people would even consider me and Tarantino in the same sentence.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about it before about how all art builds on the stuff that came before it, and just like that, you or I or anyone, it winds up influenced by the things that we like, and it's not like you're copying anything; it just becomes part of your way of thinking, and so
Mhm.
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when it comes to my dialogue, I would definitely, I definitely would say Tarantino is very influential towards how I write it because I wouldn't write a scene in a traditional fashion, whatever that means, as another filmmaker would. Like, like Tarantino's famous uh, quarter pounder with cheese dialogue. Like, only he could write a iconic scene like that and have people remember it. And uh, there's a similar scene kind of like that in the Queens of Evil. Not talking about burgers or anything, but definitely just kind of like these characters are doing one certain thing, but their conversation is completely different to what is actually happening uh, in reality. So there's completely, they're just having their own conversation while they might be torturing a guy or something, and they're just talking about uh, music videos or something like that, or and they're just completely uh, not even paying attention to what's actually going on because they're so numb to the whole idea of torturing guys at this point in the movie, where torturing a guy who's screaming is just an everyday thing. So they're just now having normal conversations, like they don't hear a man scream for his life while they're torturing him to death.
Nice.
Fun stuff like that, and a lot of fun death scenes that the I'm sure the women will enjoy and the men will find horrifying, which is exactly what I wanted. So a lot of a lot of genital mutilation and just stuff that guys would not like to see on screen, but the
Stuff
women,
that guys are going to cringe and turn away from.
yeah, and stuff that from who I've told the women would find very entertaining to see in a movie, which is great because that's what I want to do.
Nice. That sounds like it should be an interesting movie. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see it.
Well, hopefully, we're uh, we're looking to start prep for the campaign probably next month. Actually, Casey She doesn't live in California, so she's actually going to fly out to California, and we're thinking while she's on vacation, we could actually shoot a campaign video to at least get something started, and then kind of work the prep of getting people interested, getting the word out that this campaign is going to happen. So that's, I would say, probably that the Queens of Evil campaign will be out probably sometime in spring, if my math is right. We're going to take a couple of months to do prep to make sure there's enough notice out there. So when we actually launch the campaign, it will be successful. But yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, probably around springtime is when people will start seeing that out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who don't do movies, myself included, probably don't have any idea just how much time goes into it before you ever start filming a movie. And how much work goes into it before that. I mean, we understand that you have to get your cast together and you have to write a script and all that, but there's a lot more than that, I think, or at least I've been learning that.
Oh yeah, it's prep is definitely a big tool that I have been learning is a big importance with each new project. Um, I mean, we found something uh, that took almost a year to make, even though we filmed it in 4 days, from everything from pre-production all the way up to the uh, premiere of the movie. That took almost an entire year to do, even though we only shot the thing in 4 days. I mean, it took me about, God, I think it took about 4 or 5 months for me to edit the thing, and that was just me because it was all improvised. It was just me figuring out, okay, this scene goes there, and that scene would go after that, and what are they talking about? This? Oh, that's just a blooper. They didn't know they were rolling the camera. Okay, let's put that in the blooper folder, and uh, all of that, and then all of the other prep work with working with distribution after that and everything. That took a couple months as well to just get everything. So yeah, it's just a nonstop prep work that uh, is underestimated, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's out of the eye of the general public, and so
Mhm.
I don't think it's appreciated by a lot of people. I've been sort of myself just sort of getting used to or getting a little bit of an idea of it recently when I've been talking to people who make movies, and it's
Mhm.
I don't know, and I bet a lot of people who start to get the idea of making movies, especially the really indie people who haven't done anything in movies before, I bet it's a big surprise to them too.
Yeah, yeah, it's I've definitely had throughout the years a lot of experience of working with people who have never stepped foot on set before, uh, whether it be my own personal project or me working on someone else's project. It's always fun though to do that because, well, when it comes to actors, you still see the sparkle in their eye of we're making a movie, yeah, and then you turn, you see the 40-year-old veteran who's worked on this bunch of stuff. He's just like, that's just another day on set, and he's just there on the job type of thing. And so it's always interesting to see those different uh, ideologies of what it is when being on a set. And I've always enjoyed working with new people, rookies, whatever you want to call them, because it's. I've always been a filmmaker who wanted to show open arms. Like I've never really gotten the, how do they call it, the gated community, I guess you could say, where you have to be in this special clique in order to talk to this executive producer, or whatever. You have to know people in order to talk to this person, that type of thing. I've always been like, if you come to me and you say you want to do something, then I say okay. Good example of that was with We Found Something is the production assistant on there, Daniel. uh, I found out uh, probably about a year before We Found Something was even an idea, that he was a huge fan of mine, and he was a fan of Dark Wings, and he Facebooked me one day just saying he's a big fan. He's moving to California soon, and I was like, oh, okay, great. And then um, I just happened to remember that he reached out to me, and so when I was making We Found Something, I went, hey, I'm making this movie. You want to be a production assistant? And he said yes automatically, and it's just kind of my way of showing the appreciation of the fans who the few fans that see my work and appreciate it, and helping them out as well, get them an extra credit on IMDb and everything. So it's just, in a way, it's kind of my way of giving back and saying thanks, and just allowing other people to at least have a voice, I guess is the best way to say it. Um, a lot of people don't, especially in the movie industry, a lot of people don't offer that opportunity to people, especially when you don't have a name to yourself yet. You have to make your name first before anyone will even give you a hello. So it's that's something that I like to at least make a change, is give people with no voice some sort of recognition.
Nice, and I bet, I mean, I'm sure they really appreciate that too. Um,
Yeah.
I know it's funny because I publish little, I have a little publishing imprint for books, and I just think, I get these stories from people and I put them out there, and I found out later from several people, it's like, oh, I'm so grateful for you. The first time I've ever gotten my stuff out there in a book, and it's like, oh well, it was good stuff. I put it out there. I didn't grasp that it actually meant that much to these people. I was just saying, okay, let's get it out there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when when no one has a voice, there's always uh, I guess there's always some sort of a doubt with some people, thinking they're not going to be good enough, or who would even read my book or watch my movie, type of thing. And uh, me, I'm just like, well, you gotta at least try. You, if you try and you fail, well, at least you won't live with that constant uh, what if in your mind, because that's the biggest thing that really drove me to finally move to California. Was I didn't want to live a what if life where it was just I mean, up until I moved to California about 5 years ago, uh, I was just working a dead end job, really wasn't that happy, and it just happened one day where I finally just went, if I don't go now, I'll never go. And so I finally just made that decision, and uh, finally just took that big step, and I don't regret it by any means. I mean, living out in California isn't easy by any means, with all the prices and all that.
Oh, no kidding.
But at the same time, it's given me a lot of opportunities. I've gotten to work on multiple different indie films that I never would have gotten the chance to if I stayed back in the Midwest. And
Yeah.
uh, I got to make We Found Something, which um, under the circumstances probably wouldn't have happened if I was still in Iowa. So there's that benefit as well. And if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have met Kane Hodder, and just how the snowball rolls of I did this, then this good thing happened, and that good thing happened. So it's all been a an adventure, some highs and lows, but definitely I'm starting to see more of the good.
Yeah, I mean, with one of the things with indie movies is indie movies get made everywhere.
Hmm.
But California, if you want to really get into the movie industry and really get involved at a different level, you've got to be out there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it just makes sense.
yeah, it's yeah. If you want to make movies, you got to move to California. There's only about 4 places in the entire United States where you could possibly make a career in either filmmaking, movies, or television. I mean, California is definitely the top because Hollywood, obviously,
Mhm.
and then New York because that's where a lot of talk shows and Saturday Night Live and stuff like that are made. Um, and the other two would be Atlanta because that's where a lot of television shows are starting to be made, and that's where I believe Tyler Perry's studio is located, is in Atlanta. So Atlanta is starting to become more uh, filmmaker friendly and much bigger. And then I would say also Chicago is a good place because of Second City and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of actors who want to pursue it as a career usually start off as they go to Chicago, and then they usually will either move to New York or California. That's at least where a lot of people that I've seen who have how their journey started with Saturday Night Live is they started in Chicago, then they moved to New York, and then they next thing you know they're on the show. So it's
I think don't they? There are those 3 shows like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, and
mhm.
there's another one. I think I don't watch them. They may not even be on the air anymore, but I
Yeah,
think they're all filmed there in Chicago. I think.
yes they are. Yeah, a couple of my friends who pursue acting, they've gotten on a couple of those shows as well. So yeah, that's where it's filmed.
Yeah, because I live, I don't know, 60, 70 miles from Chicago. And so even where I am, we get, every once in a while, you'll see come across like casting calls for extras for those shows. So I knew they were actually filmed there.
Yeah, yeah. TV shows work well for Chicago and stuff. And I mean, like you said, you can make a film anywhere, which is true. But those 4 places are for sure the key locations, at least in America,
Yeah.
where if you want to pursue it as a career to go. And it's always funny when I was still in Iowa and I'd be working on one of my friends' movies or something, and one of the one of the persons who's producing it, they always say something like, "Iowa is going to be the next Hollywood." It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's it's winter half of the year, and there's not enough. Uh, you can only make so many movies in cornfields, so there's no possible way that it would become the new Hollywood. Iowa
Yeah.
is an agricultural state. That's what it's always going to be.
Yeah. I remember reading a stat about Iowa. Iowa has the most developed land of any state because all of it's been dug up and put into cornfields. So it's like
Yep.
it's the most artificially planted, I guess, land of any state.
I believe that because the house that I grew up in, uh, half of the borders of my of the property that I lived on was surrounded by cornfields, and we didn't own those cornfields. Some big time farmer boy owned all those cornfields, and we just happened to see him every time we opened up a bedroom door.
Well, anyway, I think probably unless you got something else pressing you wanted to talk about, maybe we should wrap it up here.
I'm good. I think this was a good sesh.
this was a lot of fun. I would love to do one again. Maybe when you get your man chicken movie done, maybe we can
Yeah,
do it for that. That would be fun.
yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna approach Wild Eye releasing again for that movie, which they've already want more content from me, so I'm pretty sure they'll take that, and that will probably be out um, probably within a year from now. I would most likely say, just because um, post production takes forever, and then distribution um, takes a while as well because they have um, it takes them about 6 months to a year to get everything ready for distribution anyway. So,
Right.
but yeah, I'd be totally open to do that.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you very much, and this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.